Welcome to episode 68 of Daniology. This one's called You Can't Change Anything. Now, I have recorded two different podcasts for episode 68 with two different titles at two different times. And in both of them, I made it to about the 12-minute mark before I hit stop, hit the X, and just had to quit. The first time it was because my wife, she's pregnant, and she was having some, first semester troubles or whatever. And she called me to come and watch Caden while she had to take care of that. Then the second time, I just wasn't feeling it. I mean, it was really, really flowing for like the first 10 minutes, but then that last 2 minutes of the 12 minutes was like, ugh, this ain't good. So I had to stop it and start over. Now we're on a different one. And you'll probably get the other two later. I just don't think they were quite as ripe as they looked from the outside. Once I bit into it, it was like, there's some things we have to work out here. But this one is called You Can't Change Anything. And it comes from a conversation that I overheard at a coffee shop several months ago. So I was sitting there doing what I do. I always have my same table. I got all my books laid out. I was working on schoolwork or something. I don't know what it was. And there were two teachers who were sitting in recliners next to each other. And they were talking, and they were having a very heated conversation. And I couldn't help but overhear what they were saying because they were so close to me. And the one older lady, she was getting quite loud, right? And I picked up that they were both high school teachers, probably teaching in the same kind of like group, like teachers have little groups, and there's like a team leader and stuff. And anyways, they were in the same kind of clique. And the one had been teaching for over 20 years. She's nearing retirement age. The other had only been teaching for about 3 to 4 years. She was close to my age. And the older lady's speech was basically this: look, I've been trying to change things in this school for 20 plus years. If you want to do these new innovations, if you want to try these different techniques, these strategies, you're just going to have to go to another school or keep your head down. I gave up trying a long time ago because when it comes to this mountain, you can't change anything. You might as well give up, put your head down, get your work done, get paid, go home. The other girl, who'd only been teaching for 3 or 4 years, she began to say things like, I just want what's best for the kids. I know these strategies will work. I know this is the best way to do things. Like, we have to make these changes. Like, we owe it to the kids, right? I don't want to give up. And then the person kept coming back. No. You can't change anything on this mountain. You've got to give up. It's not going to work. Nothing can be done in the city. People don't want to change. Blah, 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 blah. And the more that she talked, the more I wanted to go over there and tell her to go ahead and retire so this new teacher could do what she wanted to do. And just because she didn't have the guts to keep going doesn't mean that everybody else should give up too. Just because she gave up on bringing about positive change to the world doesn't mean that everybody has to follow her lead. She even brought over somebody else that walked into the coffee shop. She's like, oh, you got to come over here and talk to her. She's like, tell her she can't change nothing on this mountain. And he started saying, yep, I've been here on this mountain for dozens of years, and you can't change anything. Might as well keep your head down, get paid, get your paycheck and go on. And there was just something within me that was like, this is not right. No wonder we can't have anything good, because everybody's given up. Nobody thinks that they can make things better. Nobody thinks that they can bring about change in the world. And that young teacher's passion, instead of being celebrated, and instead of this veteran teacher asking, how can I help you? How can I encourage you? How can I empower you? She was like, you just have to give up because you can't change anything. It is what it is. It's never going to get better. No one's ever going to listen. You might as well give up while you're young and save yourself the trouble. Man. Yeah, I did not like listening to that. That's for sure. But here's the thing. We do have to balance taking too much on ourselves and giving up, right? Like, there's a sense in which you have to let it go a little bit. You have to say, okay, look, I can just give my gift, and if they change, they change. If they don't, they don't, and it's going to be okay regardless of where they go. But then there's this other side where if you really believe in what you're doing, there's no part of you that could ever give up, right? Like if you really trust that what you're doing is going to help out even one person, you owe it to yourself to keep pushing, to keep going, to keep grinding. You can give up that power, that expectation, that you can change the world, but to completely give up the idea that you can't change anything is such a terrible attitude that not only people in school systems have, but also people in churches have. This idea that we've been doing things this way for many, many years. Why even try to change? And in fact, you can't change. In fact, change doesn't work. In fact, nobody's ever been able to convince whoever that we could ever do things differently. Like, that is just so, no wonder churches are dying. We've lost the beauty of the change agent. In fact, there's so many seminars and lectureships arguing why you shouldn't be a change agent when Jesus was the biggest change agent to ever exist. If Jesus walked into our churches today, he'd start flipping over tables, driving people out of the assembly, with a whip, getting them active, getting them moving. This idea that we can't change anything, so we might as well give up, is like, oh man, do we need more of that in the world, really? Yes, it's not up to you to change others. Yes, you should just give your gift, but you don't have to fit in with the status quo. You don't have to just keep your head down and just hope for the best. How terrible is that? Think what would happen had Paul done that. He would have had to give in to these people who wanted Titus to be circumcised in Galatians chapter 2. He would have had to give in to the people who wanted nobody to eat meat sacrificed to idols. Now, while he was willing to do that, he still called the people who weren't able to do that immature and childish and needing to grow up, Now, he said he wouldn't want to eat meat sacrificed to idols, but at the same time, he's like, you guys need to grow up in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and 3. And in Hebrews, chapter 5 and 6. It's like, you guys are supposed to be eating meat. You're still drinking milk. Like, we slowed down to wait on you, but it's time to move. Come on, time to go, right? So this idea of you can't change anything, so you should just stop is so depressing to listen to, really, right? Like, if we give up bringing about a positive change to the church, I'm not talking about traditions. I'm talking about the stuff beneath that. I'm talking about the culture. I'm talking about these old ideas of everybody else is going to hell except for us. You have to believe things my way. If we give up trying to change that kind of stuff, we're not worthy to be in the positions that we are as ministers, as teachers, as Christians, as whatever. Like, we've totally lost the purpose of the gospel, I think. If we're not going to fight for these things, and who is? I don't want my son to be raised in the world that I would create by saying, I can't change anything, so I might as well give up. I don't want to see my daughter grow up in a church, grow up in a community, grow up in a world where the predominant attitude is, let's just maintain the status quo because changing stuff is too difficult. You can't change anything on Sand Mountain or whatever. Is that the world that you want your grandchildren to grow up into? Your children to go into? Your great-great-grandchildren to grow up into? Not me. If we believe that we can't change the world, then we don't believe in the power of the gospel. The gospel is the power of God to salvation. If we wield that power, what comes next? Salvation, right? Change, transformation, a positive trajectory towards beautiful, wonderful things. But if we give up, we've lost our trust in the power of the gospel. I've got plans. I've got things I want to see happen. I've got changes that I do want to see in my community and in my world. And I'm sure that you do too. Don't give up on those. It's kind of like what Gamaliel said in Acts chapter 5, he's like, hey, look, if this is from God, nobody's going to stop it. If it's not from God, it'll fizzle out. I don't want to be a part of the fizzling out. Do you? If God is going to bring about change in the world, I want him to do it through me. I want to say, here I am, send me. I'm ready. And I know that as it is throughout the scripture, when someone does stand up and call for radical, important gospel change, that often is associated with persecution, even death, ridicule. But that's a risk that I'm willing to take, and I hope it's a risk that you're willing to take in your job, whatever that might be, in your workplace, in your family, because of the refusal to believe that your children have to grow up in the same world that you did. The refusal the refusal of being content with the status quo, wanting to make this world a better place than when you found it. And that can be done through the gospel. I'm never, especially as a minister, going to put my head down and keep the status quo to keep a paycheck. That is not what God has called us to do. God has called us to transform the world through the gospel of Jesus. And that involves risk. That involves uncertainty. That involves a challenge. That involves self-denial and self-sacrifice. You can't change anything. Give me a break. You don't believe in the gospel. Because the gospel can transform the world. I wish that I'd put my 2 cents in that conversation. At the same time, it wasn't really my place. I didn't really have the full context. But what I heard, I didn't really like. Don't be that person. If someone is trying to make a positive change in the world, support them. Be there for them. Encourage them. Understand that sometimes when you tell someone to eat my flesh and drink my blood, you're not going to have that many fans. But doesn't the world need the bread of life, even if they're not willing to receive it? Doesn't the world need the challenge of Jesus, even if it does cause some discomfort now and again? It causes me to be uncomfortable. You can change the world. That's what God has empowered you to do through the gospel of Jesus. The kingdom is ever increasing. The kingdom of God is ever expanding. And I want to be a part of that revolution. I don't ever want to sit on the sidelines and say, the world is too far gone. It is what it is. Things are the way they are. Life's not fair. Might as well give up. Keep my head down. Get paid. Go to my grave. Be done with it. That sounds terrible, and I hope you agree with me. Hope you have a great day. Welcome back to Dannyology, and I will see you next week.